Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Over the past few weeks that I have been away and Hajj, I've had a lot of time to reflect on certain issues. And when we try and observe the Muslim community and introspect critically our own selves and our own community, without a doubt, we come to a judgment, which is a profound judgment. And that is that whatever we are doing in the name of truth is unchecked. What has happened is that cultures have prevailed upon us, and these cultures have defined us. And what happens is that the defense of this culture is seen by us to be the truth. And the more we are called upon to defend our cultures, the more we feel we are on the truth itself. Whereas, if we critically check what we are doing, we will find that we may be as far off the truth as our antagonists and opposition. And the truth might be that reality that yearns to be revealed beneath the veils of all these cultures. What I'm going to say will be quite critical. It will hurt. But when you are at Hajj and we see this distinction between the Islamic groups and the sects, you will begin to understand that there is nothing to do with what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wishes to impart to us from His revelation. Nor is it anything to do with the example of the Prophet, nor is it anything to do with the teachings of the Imams. You go to one camp, you find people involved in certain du'as and certain devotional acts in a particular way that defines them. To that extent, it might be fine, but to the extent that it separates them from everything else and everybody else, shows that it has gone wrong somewhere. So when you go in Arafah to the Shia camp, you will find predominantly the word Shia being resounded from their tents. And you will find a particular type of devotion that sets them apart from everything else. It would not be the simple recitation of the supplications offered by the Prophet and his illustrious progeny, but it would be mixed with so much sentiment that gives it its own coloring that has almost taken it out of the essence of the supplication that was supposed to be there. On the other hand, when you go to our Sunni brothers and their camp, you find their own cultures of simplicity that prevail upon that human conscience that wants to give itself away to Allah but is unable to. And you find them extremely suffocated and extremely restricted. And they are unable to offer themselves fully to God through the restraints of, no, the Hadith says this, and the Quran says this, and we can't do this, and we can't do that. And at that point we begin to realize that each group is as misguided as the other one in the names of truth. And none of them are arriving at the essence of what was intended. When we take a step back and we look deep within ourselves, we find the truth speaking to us in an untarnished way. When we look at the whole spectacle of Hajj, how plurality converges to a point of unity and focus, we immediately say that this is how human existence is and how it is supposed to be. Diversity is supposed to feed into a greater binding universality, where everything adds to that human common point and reconciles itself. Not that diversity tears the human community apart. In this institute, we have a lot of people working, but they complement each other. That diversity adds to the progression of the thought of this establishment. Because holistically it comes together. It converges to produce a greater whole where everybody is bound together. This is exactly what is happening in our religion. I stated last night in the khutbah at the mosque that Hajj is actually something that is awakening us, liberating us. Malcolm X, previously belonging to the Nation of Islam, when he went to Hajj, he was liberated. He came back as a reformer. His sense of Islam had changed. It became a real Islam and a human-friendly Islam. Religions cannot be impositions, because anything that is imposed upon human condition will not work. It will be a very turbulent path. And we can see that within Shia Islam. The cultures prevail to such an extent that we are suffocated within Shia Islam. Cultures prevail to such an extent that the Shias don't even call themselves Muslims as I am a Shia. Surely if Abraham says, I am a Muslim, Isa, Musa, Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says I am a Muslim, then by priority the people who advocate that they follow them in the most accurate way should pride themselves in saying, Ana awwalul muslimin, as Moses cried out. I am the first of the Muslims. But this effect of these cultures has taken them away from this fundamental reality. On the other hand, look at the Sunni brothers. They are suffocating in their theology and in their law system. Totally suffocating. They would allow heinous acts in the name of Islam. It is here when we begin to find that actually no. There needs to be reversion to the truth, and that Islam cannot be an imposition. It has to be something very natural to the human condition, otherwise it would not work. And Islam, when we look at it without all the trimmings that have crept into it, is that beautiful essence that binds human beings together, that prompts human self-realization, that allows for diversity, that allows for plurality. And it allows for diversity and plurality not to coexist, but to complement each other in arrival at a greater truth. That is exactly what we realize. I made this point yesterday, that as human beings, we are bound to be in limited cultures. But as a need of the human individual and community, we need to associate, relate to each other in a more context of a more universal, broader culture. This is simultaneously a need of the human being, that we have limited individualistic cultures and we have broader cultures that simultaneously interact. This is the whole need of human existence. This is the way we are. And this is exactly what Hajj is saying to us. Stand shoulder to shoulder, black and white, rich and poor, young and old, male and female, Shia and Sunni, Wahhabi, Brelwi, Deobandi. Allah is saying, all of you here are together, shoulder to shoulder, turning around. None of you have any preference with me. You, if at all, you have any worth. It is as a collective body converging, feeding each other, arriving at the greater truth. I said this last night, that a Shia with a long beard, a Shia mujtahid, a Sufi with a long beard, and a Sunni with a long beard cannot be distinguished in front of the Kaaba, and their long beards are not becoming a point of discrimination. All of them have long beards. There's no discrimination. Look at the message Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving, and it's so in sync with our human condition. This is how it ought to be. I want to point at a thing that I stated in Birmingham, and it became a point of a little bit of concern, but it needs to be emphasized. In Shia Islam, the message of Muhammad and Al-Muhammad has totally been hijacked to the insecurities of this group, as opposed to being those original thinkers, confident devotees of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They have been reduced to a bunch of reactionaries. The Quran is based on a dream. Today it's become a whole culture. It's become a way of life. Of course, by the primary text of the Sharia and by human nature, we are allowed to innovate and to devote ourselves to Allah in whatever way we want. But when it acquires a formal status within religion, that these things become formalized and means of organized devotion, that is the point of danger. You begin to see that nothing of this beautiful faith has remained, as given by Ali Salamullah alayhi, Al-Hasan, Al-Hussein, Al-Baqir, Al-Sadiq. None of it has remained. You look into Sunni faith, you see equally deprived of sense and emotion. Divisive literature that they have. Their theology is totally up the creek. Once I was listening to a program in which this great speaker, and I quite value him, he's a reformist, but I've forgotten his name. He was defending the Sunni position. When the Shias and their television had attacked the Sunnis, he came on television to offer a rebuttal. He said, you who are attacking these people, do you know Muslim and Bukhari, they used to do wudu before they recorded any hadith. I said to him, after wudu, if they pray 2 rakat, even then it won't make any difference because the hadith is nonsensical. It's a silly hadith. How can you record a hadith from the Prophet after doing wudu in which it says, pray behind every imam, even if he is the killer of innocent people? You will have the thawab of Salatul Jama'ah and he will have the sin of killing innocent people. How can you write such nonsense down even if you pray 100 rakat namaz? When you look at these two sects, you see that they have gone away from Islam altogether. There is nothing of Islam remaining. And at the same time, there is a huge opportunity to revive what the hearts yearn for. In the next khutbah, I'm going to follow this theme through, but just to leave you with this. Crises are huge opportunities. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. وَالْعَصْرِ إِنَّ الْإِنسَانَ لَفِي خُسْرٍ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَعَمِلُوا الصَّالِحَاتِ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالْحَقِّ وَتَوَاصَوْا بِالصَّبْرِ.
اللهم صل على محمد. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. اللهم صل على محمد.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين وآله الطيبين الطاهرين. أما بعد، السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. In this trip in Hajj, I spent most of my time reading Sunni literature. Their supplications, their fiqh. The striking thing was that I found that their spiritual texts and their legal texts are a means for us to create that common ground that is believed not to exist. When you read their du'as, you'll say, phenomenal. Aren't these just snippets and aspects of the du'as we are reciting? It's amazing, word to word. Ahmad bin Hanbal, Sunan Nisa'i, Abu Dawood, read them. Sometimes Bukhari and Muslim, read their spiritual literature. It's so close to the spiritual literature that the Shias have. Of course, in comparison, the literature that the Shia have from the Prophet, Ali ibn Abi Talib, and the Imams are superior, undoubtedly. They are superior and the supreme. But they are a means for us to build a spiritual common ground which transcends those cultural differences that are tearing us apart, or theology that tears us apart. Because spirituality is seen as the essence of connection of the individual with the Lord, which is the essence of theology itself. In their fiqh book, Ahmad bin Hanbal quotes, كان علي بن حسين, Ali ibn Hussein, إذا لبى, when he would do talbiyah, أغمي عليه, he would faint in the awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Ahmad bin Hanbal would quote, has quoted from Ali ibn Hussein's state. And then when you look at their Hajj and you look at our Hajj, you will find what difference is there between the two. apart from peripheral differences of Tawaf al-Nisa or Tawaf al-Wida. What nonsense is this necessary as a part? They have done Tawaf, we have done Tawaf. What's the big deal? Look at how close it is, the literature. There is so much there. Look at their Salah, look at our Salah. It is almost the same. The recitations of the Salah, it's almost the same. And the beauty of Shia literature is that when it's taken from the Imams, we can see the diversity that they offer. Huh? And we can see the scope that they give for human reconciliation. You will find literature from the Imams who will say, read a full Salah, a surah. In another one, the Imam will say, just read a meaningful part of a surah and that's fine. And you will find literature from the Imam which says, dispense the second surah altogether. This diversity is there to bring in this beautiful reconciliation. At the physical level, forget about at the level of outlook. The outlook level should be so broad as a human being, as a human Muslim. You see, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala deliberately leaves His verses ambiguous. وَأَيْدِيَكُمْ إِلَى الْمَرَافِقِ, and wash your hands until the elbow. He doesn't stipulate any direction. Allah allows for multiplicity of interpretation of that verse because He knows diversity, multiplicity is the absolute norm within human existence. Like anything else, there is diversity, and that diversity has to flow within the interpretation of the Sharia. But it has to be bound together as well by that common ethos. We have forgotten all of that. I'm saying, leave aside these lofty sentiments and outlook. Even if we want to go through the physical texts that are there, there is so much scope to reconcile. I was saying yesterday, and I've repeated this on a few occasions, Abu Bakr, Umar and Uthman are three Khalifas of the Muslims. It's a historical fact, undeniable. Undeniable. Ali ibn Abi Talib is the best of them, attested by all, undeniable. Ali ibn Abi Talib is an Imam acknowledged by all as a temporal and a spiritual leader acknowledged by all. What is your problem, O English Muslims? What is your problem? Everything from the Prophet is there to complement each other and to reconcile. The teachings of Ahlul Bayt, especially the being of Ali ibn Abi Talib, was a point of convergence and reconciliation, not a point of distinction and division. Now, as I stated, we are in a state of crisis. But through this crisis is an awakening. And the 2 billion almost strong Muslim body is beginning to realize that this nonsense cannot be the will of God. It's nonsense. It's nothing to do with good human life or piety, saintliness, righteousness, where people can swear at each other, curse at each other, and wanting to kill each other. When the people of Imam Ali were cursing the people of Muawiyah and Siffin, إِنِّي لَا أُحِبْ لَكُمْ أَن تَكُونَ سَبَّابِينَ, he said. I do not want you to be those who use abusive language. Instead say, Allahumma ahqin dima'ana wa dima'ahum. O Lord, safeguard our blood and their blood. Wa aslih dhata baynina wa baynahum. And bring reconciliation between us and them. And then he said, and then talk about the wrong that they are doing so that a person who does not know the truth may arrive at the truth. Look at this great master. He's saying this in front of an army that is hell-bent on killing him. As I said, in crisis there is huge opportunity, and I see this opportunity coming up now. In Pakistan, there's a mosque in Lahore, and that mosque, I think all of you have seen it on your email, is non-sectarian mosque. A Sunni Khatib, a Shia Imam. A Shia Khatib, a Sunni Imam. Nobody is allowed to ask who is the Khatib, who is the Imam. Just go and pray. Go and listen to the admonition and go and pray. Because human truth is one truth. God's truth is one truth. The prophetic and Imam Ali's truth is one truth. It cannot be otherwise. Whatever they say is right. And go and pray. Don't ask questions. There is a huge opportunity knocking at our doors. Now comes the punchline of the khutbah. Whatever is available within the Shia and Sunni is divisive right now. If you look at the television channels, you will see both are equally divisive, whether it's the Sunni channels or the Shia channels. You've got on the one hand polemicists on Taqweer television and others, and I know them very well. And on the other hand, you've got evangelical type speakers within the Shias. All of them are fueling the sectarian tension, offering false security to their partisans and followers, and none of them are of the truth. And the one thing that you see glaring at you in the face is a total lack of scholarship and a total lack of decency, that you can't tear the Ummah of Muhammad like this. And all of them believe that they are on the truth. Both are equally as misled as the other. I'm not saying they're bad, their intentions might be good, inshallah their intentions are good. We need to work with them. But then this puts the onus of responsibility upon those who have awoken. That look, we have a duty here, a God-given duty, a human duty, to talk of Islam in that meaningful, beautiful way, that these two sides, who in the name of the Prophet are tearing the community apart, may begin to see sense and channel and focus their energies in the right way, as opposed to condemning each or both and becoming one like them. The awakened souls need to be those prophetic sentiments that reconcile and bring this diversity to complement each other and arrive at a greater level of beautiful, human, godly, prophetic, and Imam Ali type of unity. Let me pray Surah Fatiha for all those who are no longer with us and for the well-being of our world at large.